So welcome to the Innovation Cafe. I think today we are going to talk about ideas, how to select and review ideas. And this topic is relevant everywhere in large organizations, small organizations, startups, established organizations. And it's quite hot now because we are undergoing a crisis. Everybody is trying to come up with ideas. So I guess everybody's struggling with which ideas should I choose, invest in. There's really momentum to have this conversation today. So I'm really curious about Marta, about the things you want to share with us, but maybe a bit about yourself, and then feel free to start presenting. The floor is yours. Over to you.
Okay, so maybe I would like to start. We are learning how to do this.
There's echo.
As I promised you guys today, I would like to talk about drugs, which means addiction. So I would like to figure out with you if money is really the key to successful innovation, if money is really the key to make innovation happen, especially in big companies, and if evaluation is really the crucial point. So my hypothesis for today would be if evaluation a smooth process and the validation as well, if we can be more successful in terms of innovation. Innovation really means not only ideation, but also, to make a business out of it. And Camila is basically my peer, and she's very experienced in the agile way of working, but she's a little bit new to the innovation. And she was really eager to meet the tribe, to share also the ideas, her observation with you. And I really believe that, having the very smart minds, experienced minds in this call and her fresh perspective, that we can really create a really nice conversation out of it and maybe find out some nice solutions, let's say, for that. So, but Camila, you can speak for yourself.
Yeah. So, hi guys, it's really nice to be here. And as Marta said, we'll be talking about evaluation, validation of ideas. I am really excited and I'm looking forward for your opinions, your suggestions, and what's on your mind about this topic. So let's begin with a short questionnaire, I would say. So please, if everyone can go to the menti.com and enter this code you are seeing now on the screen.
Are you guys familiar with Menti?
Yeah.
Okay, so we just want to measure the baseline a little bit to see. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So here we have the first question. Yeah, and I can see as you are already have some answers. Yeah, modification, side options, testing metric, decide. Okay, is everyone? Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. So, what's your impression about it?
Is there any pattern, guys, you see?
Yeah.
Like if we are talking about the evaluation, is it something what's coming to your mind?
Options, decision.
Yeah.
For testing, I'm a little bit, I think the word testing is a little bit particular. I'm not sure if it's already the evaluation stage or the validation stage. Can you maybe say a few words about that? What's about the formality? This is interesting.
Yeah, formality was me. The idea if you want to evaluate multiple options, there has to be a formality to it, or you're not going to get a like-by-like comparison. You're not just looking for a collection of subjective responses. You want some sort of process that will allow for comparisons between differences.
Okay, gotcha. So like something was, let's say, prescripted. So like you know from the beginning on what you're looking for, right?
Sorry?
Is it something like was a little bit prescribed? Like it's a formal way, it's prescribed, is it something you have to stick to?
One of the most successful bits of evaluation I ever did of a potential partner involved looking at someone's very formal evaluation and telling them I didn't care, I was going to work with a partner anyway. And they turned out to be the best partner I ever worked with. So I'm a big fan of the formality, but I'm also a big fan of ignoring it when required.
Okay, great. We're gonna talk about it a little bit later.
I think it depends on the context. If it is to decide if I'm going to invest in one project or another project, usually we are talking about the business case. In the business case is still the instrument in many organizations, where organizations spend a lot of time on a Word, on a spreadsheet, without testing the riskiest assumption first. If we are talking of evaluation in the startup world, it might be to decide if an investor, VC, wants to put his money on an idea or another idea. Or in product development, it might be something that we find in a typical Scrum methodology. We need to evaluate ideas or user stories in the ones that are going to the backlog. So I think the evaluation, it really depends on the size or the effort and the amount of investment. It requires a different technique. But there's always a moment in time where someone will decide. This is what comes to my mind.
Okay.
For me, is all about measure metrics, because I come from a background of numbers. So when I call evaluation is measure something. So I was the one that used metrics on the words.
Yeah, I think it's also right, because you need something you can compare in order to decide.
Yeah.
And to confuse you a little bit, I would like to ask you a similar question about the word validation.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Can you guys see the second screen?
Validation, right?
Validation,
Yes,
right.
validation, yeah.
To confirm something.
Compare,
Make sure, okay.
So we already have an assumption.
Cool.
We need to confirm that assumption. So probably it's after something.
So after evaluation, would you say?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And justification. That's nice.
I really like to hear that, because what we figure out, companies are really confusing these both areas. So they are trying to put the validation into evaluation and the evaluation into validation, and what comes out is basically the mess we are usually facing when they are trying to do a lot of stuff on the same time and nobody knows what's actually the goal. So what are we aiming for? But I'm really glad to see that we all have the common understanding of this both terms. I will like it.
I'm just wondering, because we might get sometimes lost in translation, in particular where we don't use our native language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you trying to learn the meaning of, or how people understand these two words in English, or also in German or French or whatever?
So we usually stick to the English words.
Yeah.
Why? Because you cannot translate them into different languages. So basically what I'm saying, for example, in German, it's more or less the same word. You can say evaluieren and validieren, but
I think the perception of that words will all be related with the background, what the subject background. Because if you talk with me in reporting, I need to do validation. I need to make sure that my reportings are in condition. So maybe in another backgrounds, the perception will be different. I think it's all to do with the subject that the people are talking on the moment. So I don't know. It's just my guess.
Okay. I think it's really important, and this is what we figure out, to make sure that we have common understanding of these two words and let's say the difference between them. Like if I'm talking about, I don't know much about the idea, I'm just looking for the value, like evaluation, which means value should be there. So first I'm trying to figure out, is there any value in this idea? So can I make business out of it? And then validation is really, I'm right or wrong.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think validation is a method to confirm an assumption, the output of something. Evaluation is, I have option A in option B. Imagine a way of doing something. Let's imagine orange juice. Evaluation will be, what's the right method to come up with orange juice in 1 minute? I will evaluate two methods, two ideas. Validation will be, okay, let me taste the orange juice. Yeah, I do confirm this is orange juice. It's okay. It meets the quality criteria. That's why I said that validation comes after an evaluation. It's to decide between two things.
I entered without saying that I was here. For me, validation, you already have something to validate against. You are meeting some criteria. While evaluation, you can be doing an assessment. You know, I want to buy a house. Okay, let's see this house and do an assessment. I evaluate it. I cannot validate because I haven't seen the house, or I could validate if I have a list of things that I want in a house. It has to have a garage because I have an automobile. And so for me, this is the difference. When you are validating, you have certain criteria that is prior to that. And when you are evaluating, you are making an assessment.
Yeah, right. I really like the examples with the oranges and with the
Yeah,
house. It
it's
really
really
makes
nice.
sense. It's really very
Easy and yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the very last question.
Because not only the wording is the problem, you'll
Yeah.
figure out that there are other problems with the evaluation. And we would like to invite you for a short quiz.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I think I need the code again. Oh, sorry, it's on top, it's on top.
Yeah.
Or just refresh the screen. Usually you can see, go to the slide. It's a refreshing button on the menu. And the question here is basically, what's the biggest challenge regarding evaluation of ideas? So I would like you guys to pick only one. What would you say, okay, is the really biggest challenge?
Well, I've already decided.
And
I would like to pick more than one option, but
okay. Okay, evaluating it is too long task. Yeah.
Okay.
No validation of the evaluation. Yes. Comprehensive business cases have no practical value. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Really nice.
Let deconstruct the coming out of evaluation. Okay, we make here a really different experience. So I'm really glad that you guys don't see as a main issue. Because let's say working with our clients, we have seen, so the way they did it before, it was really like spending a lot of time trying to evaluate ideas, making some plans, but nothing really constructive, useful came out of that. And I also, as you, I also see the no validation after evaluations, like once we decided and then we just go straight forward this way and no add any evaluation, any validation after that. Okay, any comments on this chart?
yeah, it's a good point. From my experience, in particular, working with governments, sometimes it's mandatory to confirm that the desirable outcome, imagine cost savings, and they call it benefits realization. They will confirm after the project or the transformation that the benefit is there. So I think this is a validation in the context. Evaluation versus validation, or it's not versus, actually evaluation, I think it's something different. But it's the benefit realization. So here's a business case. Okay, let's deliver the project. And now let's validate that the cost saving, or we are getting a new revenue stream because we are taxing the citizen because of this or that. Yeah, so that will be the validation.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And also see if the way I choose to reach the goal, it is the right one. So I'm on the right path or not. And maybe an alternative solution for this problem will be a better one. It's exactly what I also know from big companies, especially from the banking area. It's like, okay, once we have the business case, we just really stick to that for the next 3 years, and then a very big surprise comes across. So yeah, I think it's something similar. Hugo, you said you would like to add something else to, or you would like to pick 2 answers?
No, I would like to pick the business. Yeah, okay, I'm going to be honest. The business case was my option number 1. And my option number 2, in parallel with number 1, will be evaluating ideas last too long.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen many established old organizations, in particular these ones, where it takes sometimes more time and effort to evaluate one idea than implementing or testing that idea. But they are so afraid. It's the culture, okay? So the risk of failure, there's no appetite no risk appetite. So
Yeah.
they feel comfortable. If an idea fails, let's say, they feel comfortable because they spent hours or months working on the business case. So if it fails, they didn't fail because the business case was there. Okay, but you know what I mean. So
Yeah,
definition of
it's like they
success.
always create a business case, not to really implement
Yeah.
it and make money.
The mindset is I did my desk research, I did my PowerPoint, my spreadsheet, perfect. So I'm going to keep my job, right? If the idea fails in the market, in particular, it's not my fault. It's the market's fault, or a black swan, or COVID-19, whatever. Now it's easy to blame COVID-19 for everything. Okay, so these were will be my two options. The time organizations spend evaluating ideas instead of experimenting ideas, de-risking on a weekly basis.
Yeah, exactly. So basically you're combining a little bit the evaluating ideas last too long and also comprehensive business cases. Like people are really trying to predict the future and making the, balanced scorecard for the next 5 years. It doesn't make any sense because nobody knew that COVID is gonna come across. So yeah.
Yeah, this is a topic that Alexander Westerwalder talks in the Testing Business Ideas book. And now he also talks about this in his new book called The Invincible Company. And his recommendation is that we should test ideas frequently to de-risk developing the wrong product or service or business model. So it's about de-risking by testing. And he recommends many different techniques to test the ideas, to evaluate and test ideas.
I really liked that you mentioned it because this was also something what I figured out what is, I don't know guys about your experience, but for me really to make it possible, especially in big companies, people are even allowed to start to test because somehow everything is about money. So if nobody's giving money, to make the prototype to somehow at least start to test it, even if it's just a questionnaire or whatever, it's really difficult. And somehow still big organizations still need a business case, maybe not that comprehensive, but we still have to talk about money before we even are able to start. I don't want to judge if it's good or not. We were trying to find our way how to make the money discussion as fast as possible. Yeah, and that's what we are actually gonna talk with you a little bit. Yeah, let's go ahead.
Yeah. So moving on. Let's go back to our presentation. Yes. So we want to present to you 5 hypotheses that we have, and this is the first one, that people and especially the executives will buy into what they believe will be successful and not what you will believe will be successful. Unless, of course, you have the reputation of Elon Musk and the late Steve Jobs.
Or Hugo.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Not me.
What are
Trust me.
What is your expectation, guys, about it? I mean, experience. Like, is there one guy in the company who is saying, hey, if this guy is telling this is gonna be a good idea, everyone follows, or is this more something more rational, let's say?
Yeah.
Well, depending on I can talk about my experience, right? And by the way, I can imagine, let's go back to Apple 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Maybe Steve Jobs walked in the room and they were thinking, this guy is crazy. What a stupid idea to develop an iPhone 12 years ago. But because now we know it was successful, of course, wow, he was a god of innovation. And probably the same thing with Bill Gates when he started hiring people. And they were like, who the hell is this guy? He wants to ship a personal computer with a new operating system. This is kind of crazy. So people will follow you after, from my experience, when you prove something. That's why I usually recommend, don't talk about innovation, solve one problem. Your reputation will start to become better over time because you are a problem solver, probably coming up with a new way of working and thinking. And then, okay, let's try something different and something better. That's why I see many innovation labs failing, because they are not solving problems, business problems. They are, it's a great place, bean bags and things like that, but they are not solving problems, or the perception is they are not solving problems. Business as usual problems. That's where your reputation will be developed.
Okay. point.
Yeah, I think you're kind of talking about the pantomime of innovation there to some extent. There's the beanbags thing reminds me of a story, which may be a joke, or it may be true, that McKinsey apparently have a metric which they track, which is the number of football tables to the number of employees. And the higher the number of football tables, the more likely the company is to fail. But I suppose as a more constructive suggestion, this idea that people buy into what they believe will be successful, you know, my background's slightly different to you guys, so I've tended to work with medium-sized companies. And one of the big risks that I see is people will buy into what they want to be successful. They don't necessarily even believe it, but you might have a managing director who's got this idea that it would be great if this particular product worked. And as soon as the sales manager who wants to impress him comes up with some projections that make it look like it will work commercially, at that point it has to work, because he's got a piece of data he can hang on to for what he wants to be true, right? So it's not even a belief based on a philosophy or based on a vision. It's purely, I want this to work commercially because someone's given me some numbers that I can believe in. And that then becomes a thing the company backs, and that can be scary.
Okay. And do you guys believe that what they believe influence somehow the evaluation of ideas? So how they approach the evaluation or validation, let's say? Let me state it this way. If I believe this is going to be successful, I see the success already, even if there's no success.
I think so, in particular, because this is what I do in life. So I help teams and organizations to develop innovation process, to come up with something new and better, to reinvent the business model, etc. And what from my experience, when the maturity level in what regards innovation is low, people don't evaluate ideas, okay, using the scientific methods with facts. So usually it's biased, okay. So imagine a spreadsheet. Everything can go into a spreadsheet, but that's not fact-based. That's what I think. That's part of my. It's the method usually is the expert judgment. My previous experience. So if I'm afraid of something, imagine this idea will disrupt my job or my career, or the other guy and the younger guy will be promoted, and I'm not going to say yes to the idea just because I'm scared. It might challenge me.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's move forward. We go back to this particular sentence.
Yeah.
Once again.
So another hypothesis is that what does successful mean? Like earning money and make business out of an idea. So does it resonate with you guys in any way? Is it true? What do you think?
I think it needs to be ethical and sustainable as well.
So ethical, make money, and sustainable.
Yeah, nice.
See, I think I'd argue that that is a perfectly good definition of success. I mean, businesses run on money. You have to make money. That you absolutely have to do that. But there will or there should be successes you look at and go, I don't want that success. I'm just not willing to do that. And that comes back to the ethics, right? Maybe I could build a really successful business doing creative work for tobacco companies. I'm not doing it. I refuse. Right? But it would be successful if I did.
Yeah, this is also something I'm not sure about your experience. I still have the feeling like, let's say, 80% of the companies I'm working with, the core is really money. So like, there's they pretend, okay, sustainability and ethic, everything is important, but at the end of the day, what counts is money.
Money is everything.
Can you relate to that somehow?
That's the nature of a private company, which is normal. Companies exist to be profitable and to make money. That's fine. Shareholders are there because of that, and stakeholders are there because they can get a salary. So, but the thing is, after COVID-19, this is an important discussion that I'm having now in many different places, locations, is everything changed. So the word ethical and sustainable is becoming more popular. I hear it more often now. Okay, imagine now it will be really hard to imagine invite 10,000 employees. Hey guys, let's come back to the office tomorrow because we need to make money. Everybody will be like, sorry, back to the office? Is it safe to go back to the office? Can't I work from home? So people are like, I think all the economy is based on trust and in being happy, in the pursuit of happiness. And we can go back to the Maslow pyramid. If I'm afraid or I'm scared of something, there's a virus, right? We need to understand this. So the moment we are living is a special, really special moment. So I really think organizations will think about, yes, making money, of course, in a sustainable way, meaning we don't need, so the priority was usually the fiscal year, right?
Yep.
And that's why probably many companies are struggling, because the investment in resilience was low. That's why many organizations, after two weeks or three, closing their doors, they were like, okay, we can't continue. We need to shut down the business. We need a bailout, because the investment in resilience was low. And I understand why. It was all about profit and the fiscal year, not thinking about tomorrow. So is it ethical for employees? Because in many organizations, there are cases of suicide now because people lost their job. So ethical and sustainable, I think, are going to become more relevant. In 5 years' time, we will forget again, probably. But
So
until
basically,
then,
summarizing, money is important, but there are also another criteria we should consider during the evaluation, right?
Yes. Okay,
Let's
moving
make it
on.
like that.
Yeah.
unless you are in the, I don't know, the drugs business or,
They are also
in the narco business.
yeah, so that's let's say my hobby, and what I figure out, they are also really thinking a lot about the resilience, the PR stuff, and so on. Because if you don't have the support from the original people living in the city you want to expand as a mafia or so on, so they also have to take care about the ethics somehow and sustainability of the business.
Okay, so another thing that we observed is that setting the ROI's estimation is like some kind of predictions and kind of a magic what is happening there. But what really matters is the conversation and the fact that people follow the flow of money. So what would you say about the ROIs and the estimation of it?
Do you guys have good experience with that KPI ROI, or it's something you say boring?
It's all about the ROI, in particular when we develop a business case. Many decisions are taken because of the return on investment. That's probably the number one KPI. And then it probably is the NPS, the Net Promoter Score. That it's becoming important, but end of the day, it's the return on investment. Yeah. So if I invest 100, how much am I going to get? 200? Fine, let's go. Oh, you don't know. Okay, so please improve the business case, and then we will talk again.
Okay, I what just I figured out was like people really believe in the numbers, so they're still missing, this part, the link that is still a sort of estimation is my forecast. So it could be that the forecast is wrong. There are no conversation about the ROI. Like, okay, if somebody is telling me it's 2% after 5 years, people will just believe it. There's no conversation how and so on. And the thing, what really surprised me, that executives sometimes really forget people who follow the flow of money, which means if you give them money to do A, they will probably do A, they're not gonna do B. And I know it sounds really surprising, but I'm not sure about your observation, that they are really surprised that, hey, I expected them to do B, I just forgot to give them money for the B. So they were doing A. And what I really figure out, just putting this one sentence, people follow the flow of money, it really helps also to evaluate ideas and see, okay, what I really want to achieve, where should I put the money? I'm not sure if you have similar observations, or if it's something what you say, hey, lucky me, I never had this issue. So this is also something we would like to present a little bit earlier in the operative part of this presentation.
But the problem, from my experience, is that the ROI is calculated according to what people want to hear. So imagine that your manager wants 20% return on investment. You will adapt the P&L or the budget or the business case to get that return on investment. You will find a way to get there. Or if you are in a startup and you are looking for a VC, business angel, whatever, and you know that usually they want a 40% return on investment, you will adapt everything to get those 40%. It's the way the market is structured, in my experience.
Yeah, that's totally valid. And why is it so important? I think Bob Iger is saying us also a little bit. This slide summarizes perfectly what you just said, Hugo. Like executives really want us to see this cost-benefit math, and they really believe it. And what we were saying before, like, okay, ethics, sustainability, I still see that, yeah, there's something, they have it somehow in mind, but what at the end of the day, what really matters is the cost-benefit. And this is also something what we really observed, and this is something what we would like to, let's say, it's a problem we would like to solve, and what we believe really what we managed. So
yeah, the problem of that, and that's probably still the mindset of the last industrial revolution, is that, for instance, the market price or the share price of Disney now is down because they didn't invested soon enough in business model innovation in digital. I can imagine something similar happened to Blockbuster. And then Netflix, and it wasn't then, it took probably 10 years, because then Netflix didn't started when Blockbuster went down. And many of these, and you mentioned Elon Musk in your previous slide, he's not probably worried about spending money. And many VCs are talking about, oh, money is a commodity. So cost and efficiency was everything after the Industrial Revolution. We need to do more with less. The new type of entrepreneurial manager or decision maker, he's searching for a scalable business model. And cost is not an issue. What matters is to find that scalable business model, or to create a new market or in industry that will probably disrupt others, and he will be number one on that particular market. So from an old school industry perspective, and this is still what many CEOs studied during the MBA, but the new entrepreneurial guy, cost is not his thing. Even profitability is not his main priority. Is to find the scalable business model.
And sometimes he's successful, sometimes he's not. This is also something we should say, because I think people referring to Elon Musk, usually they say, hey, this guy was successful due to Starlink, due to the capsule he shot into the ISS yesterday. And but a lot of people really forget that some of his business models and, let's say, investments were also not so successful, but usually nobody is talking about it. And yeah, I think this is also something which really made people feel comfortable, like, look, Musk is so awesome, he's always successful as a guy, and they really don't want to think about, let's say, the dark side of investing, and also that it may fail.
I really think the book from Professor Clayton Christensen makes sense now, because I'm talking about the innovator's dilemma, where he talks about big companies that are not able to serve smaller clients because it's not profitable. Okay, and what disruptors do is they will create a product to serve those clients. Okay, and then it's too late, because there's a new need, there's a new market, and then the big guy will go home.
Yeah.
So it's the innovator's dilemma. This is disruptive innovation. He talks about examples in the United States, and it's happening now. So imagine universities. Many were like, what? Online training? No, that's not profitable. What we do is we get students in, they will get out after a certain amount of years. And at the same time, take a look at Udemy or Udacity, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, even Singularity University. And now they are like, oh, we need to go online. Is it too late? It might be too late for many universities, because now they are competing with every single university in the world. So why should I invest in my local city when I can go to San Francisco or whatever, a London Business School, regardless of where I am? So the thing of cost, it's not efficient if your target is the fiscal year and not the sustainability that I was talking about. Or that might be a decision of the shareholder to say, I don't care about the future, I care about getting the return in 10 years' time. And then if the company goes down, that's okay. But someone needs to decide this.
Yeah, and this is relates us also to this one slide, because what is written in the upper corner, like, I heard this idea from one of our clients, and first I was a little bit shocked, And then he just told me, you know what I want? I don't want to stick to the feature release plan. So I don't care what features did you release end of this year, but I want you to stick to the expected ROI. Which first shocked me because I was also like, hey, come on, ROI and money is not everything. But then I just figured out, okay, maybe it really makes sense to say, hey, we have a certain plan. I want after 2 years, I want 2% ROI, and I don't care how you're gonna do it. I just want this business grow. So basically, I was really thinking if this approach is not helping us to search for scalable business model, what you were mentioning before. This is also something I would like to include in the model I'm going to present you later. Sorry. And also, I'm not sure, guys, are you familiar with the model of agile founding? I suppose yes.
Yeah.
So basically, going step by step, and this is also something that we figure out. It helps to let's say make the investment and make the ROI calculation, make the whole financial part of innovation, of implementation of ideas much more tangible.
Many CFOs are becoming VCs from a mindset point of view. And what they do is exactly the process of how startups are developed. So you want to test an idea, fine, I will give you budget for 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Then prove your risk assumption, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then I might give you a seed funding, and then in 2 months' time, I will decide if I continue to invest. And this is the opposite of the business case, where we will approve 5 million and we don't know if it is going to work. So, but this is still
the more because I also seen business cases really done like that. So in 5 years, I'm expecting following flow of money. And at the end of this year, I'm expecting following stuff. And some people, you know, also call it business case. So I would say this is classical. What you were referring to is a very classical business case. Like I'm calculating my, let's say, my financial statement for the next 5 years, right?
So I think the level of risk, the type of funding, it depends on, do we know the problem? Do we know the solution? Fine. So that's a fixed price project. Let's fix that problem. We know how to fix the problem, okay? If the level of uncertainty is low. If the level of uncertainty is high, we don't know the problem we need to explore, or the unmet customer need, or we don't know the customer need, we don't know the solution, which means the risk is high. It requires a different type of funding.
Yeah, makes sense. Oops,
yeah.
Summarizing.
Yeah.
So no matter what makes sense. Yeah, go ahead, Camila, sorry.
Yeah. So, you know, you should keep in mind that setting the numbers, the finances is just a hypothesis. It's always gonna to change. You would probably never be gonna, you know, the same as we predicted at the beginning. So yeah, we should always keep in mind that the finances and putting numbers on the ideas, it's always gonna be a hypothesis. So I am just wondering, did you have this kind of, I would say, perfect situation of a straight as an arrow, you know, this idea and evaluation, and then setting the finances like this? I predicted this way and this happened to the end.
You mean like a business case that really worked out as I predicted the numbers?
As I predicted, yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that.
Okay, so usually it's not the highway, it's usually something like that. And we would like to show you basically how we try to deal with this problem, because people still expect something like the highway. Okay, put my numbers and it's gonna work this way. And this is basically something how we do in the practice. And Kevin, you probably, I'm not so good in drawing, so my model is not that nice. But it's basically what I took out of your model. So like we have the speed on the one SL and the G-forces on the other one. Is it right? Correct? I assume so. And basically, as I said, it came to my mind a few days after you presented this model that we are actually using something similar, because what we just were saying in the evaluation stage with the executives, when we really have to talk about money, because we really face the problem that the conversation about money starts all of the other conversation, and we want to keep this conversation very short. very productive and very outcome focused. We just said, okay, in our case, we always put the ERI up to 1 year. And I'm just taking here 1 year as an example. Of course, it depends on the industry, it depends on the company. Sometimes you take 3 months if it's really very fast growing startup. Sometimes you take 5 years. But basically you have to set the baseline, and usually we take 1 year. So if we have a list of projects, if we have a portfolio, we definitely ask people, okay, I will tell you later how we do it. Take the ERI and put the ERI on the ESL here. If you have, after 1 year, if you have 0, 5%, 10%, and so on. And on the other ESL, and this is something what for me it's really relevant to the G-force, because money is a very strong G-force, in my opinion. And we really ask them to put here the money, which means, okay, what is your investment budget? And we really try to keep the investment budget as a sort of work in progress limit. So in Kanban, you usually have, I don't know, 5 tasks or 6 tasks that we can do simultaneously. And here we just say, okay, our investment budget, please treat it as a KPI, okay? As a work in progress limit, so not a KPI, sorry. So basically we put these 2 borders here. We just say, okay, are you more fast growing company? So you're aiming for ROI bigger than 10%, or are you more a conservative company and you're just more in this area? How we prepare for the workshop is basically we try to make it as simple as possible. And in this case, I really wrote here down trust and accountability, which means, Hugo, you were referring to the problem that usually you try to put in your business case what managers expect you to tell them. And this is really hard work to make the preparation for the workshop and really talk to the people, what's your honest opinion, what can we make out of this project? And this is a very long journey, and it takes tons of hours to really get people there and say, okay, what's the reliable expectation? We always say, okay, guys, somehow innovation really needs to rely on trust and accountability, which means if after 1 year you will have 1%, it's not a problem. But if you promise me after 5 years 15%, or let's say after 1 year 15%, and we have 0 or we only have 3, it's not gonna work. So summarizing, we are trying to put this sort of table, get the data out of the project champions, product owners, and whatever, go really with them into the deep conversation. So at the end of the day, we can make the evaluation together with the executives or the board of directors and so on. And how does it look like, the evaluation stuff? As I said, we need the conversation about money because it's the starting point for all the other conversations. And this is how we proceeded with that. We just say, okay, this is your budget, this is your limit. Let's take 50,000 euros as an example, and really try to put the projects, to put the portfolio on this diagram. So here, for example, you can see, okay, I have one idea. The budget here is roughly 8,000 euros. My expected ROI is still 0. It's fine. Everyone is aware of that because I have another project, and here after 1 year, I indeed expect even 6% of ROI. Which means also it earns some money. So I can, basically you can see it here. I put this dotted line a little bit below the previous one. Some companies like to present it this way. Some companies say, okay, I'm still putting it basically on the top of this one, of this bar. But let's say what we achieve here, and we make a really great experience with this sort of presentation, that you have all of your portfolio somehow sorted. So you see how diversified it is, really. So I have some conservative ideas, I have some fast growing ideas, I have some champions, let's say, that will make money in a few years. But I can also see, okay, this one, let's take the 5th one as an example, it's not gonna work. So probably I have to adjust my budget, or I just have to cancel this idea, or I just need a conversation here, otherwise this is not gonna work. Which helps me at the end of the day to push the money to the ideas I really want to follow. And as we learned before, people follow the money. So if I give the money for this idea and I actually don't want this idea to be implemented, it doesn't make sense at all. This is a very simplified diagram. As I said, for us, it worked pretty well. Yeah, now I'm curious to hear, guys, what do you think about it?
So this is a model that you've developed. I'm sorry, because I think I've lost 2 minutes of.
Yeah, so this is something basically how we go for workshops with the let's say executives. You can say so. So basically with people who decide where to put the money, so how they should structure the innovation budget. So this is something we developed, it worked pretty well for us, and I'm just looking forward to your comments. So if you see, okay, it makes sense, yeah, I like it, I don't like it, I see a lot of problems here, something that you're not showing up here, and this is not helping at all. This is basically what I would like to discuss with you.
I guess sometimes it's how you structure. It's not about the model, it's how you communicate the model and the examples you bring to the table. So if I'm working on a large, old, clunky organization, and the example I bring to the table, imagine a 5-6 Bs organization, but old and probably this model is declining. If I bring to the table an example of a 6 Bs organization, but a fast growing organization, and I tell the decision maker, these guys are investing 20% in innovation, they will be like, oh, but we are not a startup. We cannot afford to invest 20%. So it's about the example I bring to the table. It needs to be similar, or else they are like, oh, those young kids running a startup, that's different. They are not even profitable. Or it's not the model, it's about the pitch, how we position the examples we bring. This is my experience. Regarding the model, I think it might work if you can explain it in a way that it resonates with who they are from a culture point of view and their understanding of corporate innovation.
Okay, I'm not sure if we are referring to the same. Basically, what we are doing here are their ideas they have and they want to follow up in the next fiscal year. So I'm not showing in, this is, let's say, this is Elon Musk and the red one is, I don't know, Steve Jobs, and this one is somebody else. It's basically their ideas where they estimated the ROI and they just really bring them to the conversation. Okay, what are you expecting here? So what are we talking about? So what are we spending our innovation budget, in my case, 50,000 euros only, but what are we spending this money for? And what we expect after 1 year.
Okay, can I confirm?
Showing them this is Musk. This is their idea.
So can I confirm that I'm understanding this correctly? This is ideas which a company is considering investing in. I see 5 bars here. Is each of those 5 bars an idea which they are considering investing in?
Yes.
Why is one pink and the other 4 orange?
This one is pink because it's basically going above your available budget.
Understood. Okay, so if I were...
This is the first one, they said, okay, I like this one, then we should evaluate this one, this one, this one, this one. Okay, for the 5th one, we don't have money, probably. What can we do? If you really need to invest into this one, we have to change something here.
Yeah, so why, as the CFO or the CEO, I would look at this and I would assume my reaction would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 1, we haven't got budget for, but that's okay because we can kill 3 and 5. They both look like crap ideas. Kill them, release the budget for 1, and come up with another idea to get in there because we've got some budget left. So that's how I would start reading that. Am I reading that correctly?
So you mean this one? Basically, can you see my cursor? So you will kill this one and this one and this one, and say, okay, let's go for this one.
I'm not sure which ones you were pointing at, but I see 2 over on the left that seem to have no return on investment, but want my money. So I would be inclined to look at that and say, well, in that case, take them outside and shoot them. And that frees up cash for the one that's gone over budget, because I don't care if it goes a bit over budget because it's giving me a good ROI. Am I reading that correctly? Is that the sort of way you'd expect people to be looking at this?
Exactly. That's the way actually we expect people to look at that. And exactly this sort of conversation we would like to have, because in this case, and this is also what I'm showing here, okay, look, we have 0 ROI after 1 year. Maybe this is the idea we really believe. It's something like what I had in this diagram. After 3 years, it's gonna bring me 15%, and I strongly believe in that. I'm gonna evaluate it, I'm gonna really stick into it. But this diagram is showing me exactly here the risk. Guys, we are spending, let's say, more than a half of our budget in something what we believe will bring us huge ROI after 3 years. And this is exactly what you were mentioning, is exactly the sort of expectation conversation we have, let's say, with the people when we are preparing together with them this diagram. So basically, hey, why are we sticking into that? Maybe the amount of money should be shorter, so we can also go with the idea number, with the pink idea. So that's the point. That's right.
I think there's a really interesting tension here between trying to get everything quantified, which I love the idea of instinctively. I love data, you know, show me numbers and let me crunch through it and let me find patterns. And trying to take the human element out of it. So this doesn't have anyone's names. It doesn't have a logo. It doesn't have a smiling face. It doesn't have anybody in the room arguing for it. It's subjective. And I can't remember who it was I was reading about, but it was one of the sort of big conglomerates that was saying, look, every year we get 50 people internally who say, I've got a $100 million business idea. And they're all $100 million business ideas, and they never are. And we can only back 5 of them. How the hell do we choose this? And what they did was they eliminated from the room when the decision was making anybody with a vested interest. So as a business unit lead or as a product champion, you're not in the room when the investment decision is made. And that seems to be where you're going with this. We're saying we're reducing this to simple, cold, hard numbers. We don't care what you're invested in emotionally. We don't care about the people. Make that decision based on this. But then there's also the tension that thinking about venture capitalists, which Hugo mentioned earlier, VCs will say, well, we're investing in the team more than we're investing in the idea. Because if the idea is wrong, a good team will turn it around. And that's what matters to us. And so this is kind of like on that spectrum, this is really extreme at one end. And I'm not sure if that's a bad thing or a good thing, but it just sort of strikes me that it's playing to that tension a bit.
And this is actually how we use it, because as I said, to bring all of the ideas to this chart and plot them and put them on the easels, usually it takes, if you will prepare the ROI stuff, it takes usually, let's say, 2 up to 3 hours with a whole discussion and so on. And this is something what I really like, because you have first this very, very unemotional, as you said, view on the facts, and then you can still get, let's say, the next layer, the more emotional part. So you're not only going with your gut feeling, you're trying to put some, let's say, logic into that. And if you say, after all, okay, gut feeling, this is something that I can trust, it's fine, it's perfectly fine. We just really try to put some, let's say, logic and get out of this emotional way of thinking about business. Because what we realize, what happens then is like you still push money, you still push the idea in love, even if the ROI, expected ROI is not so high. So I really like that you mentioned the point that there are no faces, there are no funny names, there is no cozy sunshine and nothing all like that. And as you said, yeah, it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. Yeah, thanks for the feedback. Cool, I think we are running a little bit out of time.
No, Feel free to continue, to go on, yeah.
I'm free to continue. I just wanted to, and this is also something what came to my mind when we were talking about the validation, because as I said, for me, this session today was more to hear about you, what's your experience, guys. And this is something really interesting I came across, and we also practice with our clients. We were talking about the business case. We are also talking about the validation part of the ideas. And this is something what we usually do after the evaluation phase. And this is not our idea. This is basically something we took out of 2 very, very clever minds. In the middle row, you can probably recognize the Keynesian model. So when we are talking about a simple, complicated, complex, and chaotic environment, and what you see in the upper row is basically something we took out of the book I presented on the right-hand side. They call it innovation zones. And this is something you're probably familiar with. You already mentioned disruptive innovation. This is also something they refer to. So they say, basically, I have the very structured incremental innovations. I'm changing small things. This is pretty simple. I just take small minor changes and I'm implementing it. I have something like a neighboring territories. For example, I'm expanding my business and bringing a new product to a new market. They also say, okay, sometimes I'm reframing the business. For example, Ryanair just changed the way people fly and the face of the aviation business. And this is a little bit more complex. And I have also something that's really new to the world that is really game changing. And here we are talking about disruptive innovation, something really co-evolve. And this is our observation, what we really figure out. Usually, if I'm sticking with the blue part, so like I have really incremental innovation, something what's new, but not that new for the company. The order system, what we usually know from the companies, the waterfall approach, the stage and gate process, so what people usually use as an innovation model, it works pretty well. So this is something people know the industry well, they know the market, they are feeling really comfortable with that. And usually it's really helpful. So it brings them to the results they're expecting. As soon as we are moving to the yellow and orange part, the system changed. So in this case, we really need to stick with the lean startup approach, with agile founding, with all of the methods we are mentioning about, with really simple case studies, with very short iterations and so on. But the lean startup approach, let's say, it's not the one and only method. So sometimes it really makes sense to speak what we already know, how we do the business and how we approach in a very classical way the innovation. And as I said, this is our observation. Because we somehow love the lean startup approach and we really want to push people there. Yeah, but sometimes the old structured work makes sense. And I'm really looking forward to your opinion. Does it make sense to stick with the stage and gate processes sometimes, or it's something what you say, hey, it's really never working?
I like the Keynesian framework. By the way, I think it's a Welsh word. And it's a good method to understand what methodology or framework we should use. And I was talking about, we know the problem, we know the solution. So it's complex or it's not complex. In the Keynesian framework, it helps to frame that. But I usually don't talk about the Keynesian framework because people don't understand it. They don't even want to know what it is. This is something we talk because we are innovation strategists, but those that are not, or maybe they went through a product owner certification, and this is part of that body of knowledge. You also mentioned lean startup. It's becoming more and more popular in the corporate world. But one thing is being an entrepreneur, running out of money, and exploring what works, pivoting. Another thing is working with a salary, and you know you will continue to have that salary if your idea is not proven. So the methodology is good under pressure. Without pressure, I've seen a few good things here and there, but it's not enough. So this is my experience regarding the methodology. You need to change the incentive system, the leadership style, and you need to create an environment where people really feel it's just like a startup. So maybe they can get 50% of the outcome. I don't know. Just the method by itself. One thing is implementing Scrum as a methodology to develop a product. Another thing is exploring a new product with a scalable business model and the things that Lean Startup is trying to solve. This is
interesting that you're saying you're not showing Keynesian because in our experience is basically the opposite. So if you show it to people, they really love it because for them it's like, hey, now everything makes sense. Now I understand if it's complex, I need Scrum. If not, I can stick to the old methods. So this is really interesting to hear that your guys not doing it because for us it's like the first tool we are showing them. So okay, understand where you are. That's really interesting. Good to know that.
Maturity level. It depends, Marta. It depends on the maturity level. If they already are investing in innovation, let's say, they are open to listen to this. If they are not, and trust me, I've worked in many successful organizations. They are like, I don't care. They don't tell you, but they tell you that they don't care about the buzzword I'm bringing to the table. I've seen that. Others are even worse. They are like, okay, nice. So this is a project, right? Oh, lean startup. Oh, it's a project. Then they call it lean startup, but they follow the typical project management methodology. And I've seen this many times. They call it something different, but they follow the same methods and principles of the project management world, where they know what needs to be delivered and how. I've seen many crazy things so far.
Yeah, I mean, just if I can jump in on the Sneffin thing a bit, Sneffin, I actually have no idea how it's pronounced. I know what it means. It means it's Welsh for habitat or familiarity or domain. But what strikes me, what I love about this and why I'm sitting here grinning, is because we use it as a standard part of the onboarding process, but always with the assumption that chaotic is bad. And that is a state you want to escape from. Yeah. And kind of like you, we're assuming that if you're escaping to a complex situation, then we're talking about something that's more iterative and so forth, and less like a waterfall approach. But I'm really grinning about this because I love the idea of reframing chaotic as a positive. And because that could be a limitation of my experience. I've just never seen it done like that before. That's really cool.
It is, I agree. Very good, yeah. Very good one.
Yeah, and also I think, you know, you can basically skip also the middle line. Of course, depends on the maturity level of the organization. But what we make really great experience, let's say, is really to show them, hey, what you had before, like your waterfall approach, your stage and gate process, everything what you have, basically, what you have done before in your innovation management, is not necessarily bad. It's just not going to help you if you want to be the new Elon Musk. And let's say, fly into space. And this is basically this sort of conversation when I realize, okay, it really helps people really to say, or let's just say, refer to the experience, okay, really, she's right. It worked pretty well for certain projects, but in a certain way, it didn't work for a different kind of project. And this is basically something what I figure out. If you show them, this is a blue project or this is more a yellow project, and then they say, yeah, you're right, this is more actually a yellow one, so maybe we should stick to something new.
I love the color coding. That's a very good idea. That's one takeaway. Another one from today's session. What type of service are you selling here? Is it innovation management?
So basically what we are doing, we are only doing workshops. So people can hire us basically if they are really struggling with the evaluation part. So what we've done so far is you have a design thinking workshop within your company. So people basically come out with thousands and tons of ideas, a lot of post-its, maybe some prototypes and so on. And then, okay, you have somewhere to start. You don't have usually money, resources, or time to start on all the projects simultaneously. And what we offer as a service is basically, okay, hey, your executives all together, let's figure out, or people, you know, who are able to decide. Sometimes it's not the executive team, sometimes it's a different team. Okay, where should we start and how we can really, let's say, let's make best out of it. So what should we put the focus, or should we start, what ideas we're gonna follow later on, and what's the plan for that? So this is something that's why we were talking about evaluation and validation at the beginning. First, evaluate if you want to follow the idea, and then if you want to validate it's more on the blue part, something more classic, or is it something where I should go with lean startup approach, very short iterations and so on. And, you know, people usually after a workshop go out with this idea, okay, I have evaluation, I see what the numbers are, I have the base idea what we are working on next year, and I have the basic idea how we want to proceed with the project. So this is something what we basically do. Does it make sense?
It does make sense. It's a good approach. Sometimes one small change to an approach is everything. So I will test this, by the way, if you don't mind. I don't know if I need to pay anything. If there's IP here.
There's no idea. Everything is free. Feel free to use it. We are really looking forward to your feedback because, as I said, we tested mainly in the German market. Which what I learned is a little bit different, I think, from the British one and from the Portuguese one. So also we learned it's totally different than the Polish one. So I'm really looking forward, guys, to your feedback, if it's helpful or not, how you use it, and so on. So share with us. Yeah. And I think we are really running out of time right now. So.
Yeah, we are, but that's fine. This is really cool because you've updated your presentation with what Kevin shared with us a few days ago regarding G-forces. And this is innovation, right? It's to build something.
I want to steal that one right back. I totally want to use that.
Kevin, that's what I expected. That's what I was hoping for. That's good. Pretty cool. Okay, guys. So from our side, that's it. Thank you for the nice feedback. Thank you for the discussion. I really took a lot of notes. So thanks for that.
Really, thank you for participating one more time in the Innovation Cafe. I think we all learned something new here. And because the video is going to be available on YouTube, others will have a chance to learn. And to be honest, I will revisit this video once again, because there are a few things here and there that I think are really useful. And I need to learn because I need to experiment this. these things. I'm really in love with this slide. Okay, so yeah, just to be brutally honest, it's really, really good. So yeah, thank you all. Let's stay in touch via our Slack if you want to. It was a pleasure to host this session again. Okay, bye bye.
Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.